Hey you guys, Mickey here. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to make a video about growing medium or soil or potting mix or whatever you want to call it. But in particular, I want to show you guys how to do it on the cheap, because it's one of those things where if you go to the store, you're going to spend a fortune and only fill up a few of your pots. And it's something that as you learn more and more about soil and soil life, you can do it more and more efficiently and do it really well. And so we'll talk about what kind of ingredients you can get for free and what I like to use in my mix basically, and how it grows, things like that. So hopefully you enjoy the video, learn a few things, and maybe it helps you save a few dollars. So let's go. I grow with whatever I have available, because if you are trying to just have soil that you can grow in available, you use the resources that are around you. So a big chunk of what I'm growing in is this material, which is the cheap bed mix from the soil yard. So a bulk soil from a soil yard, the cheapest one. It is something that I'm just using basically for volume, for a base. Now you can absolutely start with straight pine bark for about the same price. This one is a little heavier because you see it comes with some sand, and I imagine they add a few things to it, but basically it's a compost mix. So that pine bark mulch is a big part of just a wood mulch, is a big aspect of this, and then some topsoil or fill. Now what you can see right here is that this stuff compacts really quickly. This is a big reason why it's an awful growing medium by itself. It after a few waterings, all the airspace gets squeezed out and it gets this really compacted structure. That's kind of cool. I haven't even, so this stuff in my hand, I probably bought it maybe 3 weeks ago and it sat in a bin, but there's a worm tunnel right in the middle. So speaking of the worms, the worms do like this stuff. They really like it, and they end up over structurizing it. So this, first let's add some cheapo bed mix. But this is what it looks like when those worms go in and over structurize the soil. This is a good one. You can see it was a 1 gallon pot. It was basically organic media, growing media, and maybe compost, maybe this bed mix, but like 95% organic matter. And so the worms have come in, and there are tunnels all through here, and you see those holes. So the worms create structure for themselves, but they don't necessarily help the plants to grow, because they compact everything else around these tunnels. So they're not ideal. And there's a lot of information out there on this worm. Alabama jumper is what I like to call them. So pros and cons. They definitely are changing the environment. But this material, this block of over-structurized soil, is still a good amendment because it's got a lot of biology in it, and so that goes back into the mix. Being able to grow is just about growing what you can. So here's some small Alabama jumpers doing their thing, jumping, that's how they get their name. So that goes back in. So it's like, now I got to make that better. I have that base of low quality stuff, and so what I add next, and probably I would grow in a 50-50 mix of the junk and straight compost. So this is, and it comes with all the trash as well. This is a finished compost, 100% organic matter. This has already been grown in for a season, and so basically this is made up of leaves, maybe a little bit of sticks and twigs, but stuff from the side of the road, and I just pile it up and let it break down. This is a very different structure. If you'll see how it it crumbles readily in my hand. That's really good for the internal drainage. This doesn't get compacted as quickly through the waterings, because water is the major compactor. So it's not like, you know, you're stepping on the media in your pot ever. It's just you water so much, and all that water compresses the air space, and you're left with a poor growing medium. So this has some chunks of material still yet to break down. It's got, you know, mycelium right there, still running on leaf surface area. This is super rich biologically, and this can help to prevent it from, you know, both compacting but also add fertility. They kind of can utilize some of that carbon that's left, that organic matter. And so this also goes into the mix. So now we're off to a much better start. The compost and the fertility in it, there's a leaf, is probably the most important ingredient. But we're not out of the woods yet as far as compaction, and that's the biggest thing that we have to fight. So I will add a little bit of this, which is just a soilless media that I rescued from the curb. This happens all the time. People throw out houseplants, and there's a lot of good media in there. So this is probably got more peat. It's definitely got vermiculite right there, and it's got little chunks of perlite. I don't know if you can see the white here. That's perlite. The white one is perlite, and the metallic one is vermiculite. They're both pretty similar. They're like puffed rock. There you can see a lot of perlite there. So this is going to help to improve the drainage, preserve the internal drainage. Here's big chunks. So in addition to that resource, which can help improve your drainage, you can also go out and purchase vermiculite or perlite. I actually prefer perlite, but they only had vermiculite last time I went. So this is vermiculite. I think the mineral itself is also called vermiculite, and they just heat it, and that gives it this light. It's super light. So it's like adding sand or gravel, but without the weight, and that's why it's a real important thing. So you want to add a good bit. You know, seed starting mixes can have up to 50% vermiculite without a negative impact or anything. So I would add a good bit, maybe like up to 20%. It's the most expensive ingredient, and it's not necessary. If you have unbroken down organic matter, so like that compost that I showed you guys, if you have kind of unfinished compost, it can serve a similar function in helping to keep the compaction at bay, just through, you know, having the worms move through the whole thing to feed it, to eat it, and stuff like that. So we're definitely trying to lighten this material and preserve that drainage. So perlite is also cheaper slightly than vermiculite. Oh, perlite also is slightly more easily broken down, crushable than vermiculite. So if you're going to be like mixing or reusing, perlite turns to dust more quickly. And perlite is they're both, you know, it's straight silica, I think, so like a glass, you know, volcanic glass or something. And just they heat it up a lot and it puffs up. So now we're starting to look like those really nice mixes from the nursery, the ones that are like $10 for a little bag, and we're doing this on the cheap. We're doing it with, you know, crummy stuff. So when I was mixing soilless media in college, I did a lot of it, and a really big ingredient was always dolomitic lime, and I don't have any today, and I don't always use it. I have used it, and if it was available at Home Depot and Lowe's, I would definitely have it all the time, but I have to drive far to get it. But it's a really important mineral ingredient. That's what's usually missing when you go and try and grow in you know, soilless or 100% organic matter, compost kind of growing. You usually end up with nutrient deficiencies, and the big one here is magnesium. So I'll add some Epsom salt as needed, because that's, you know, water soluble, so it's easy to apply the magnesium. But so basically there's always more to it. So it has to do with managing pH. Liming the media raises the pH, and that can be valuable. It can be a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. Here the city water comes in at a really high pH and comes in really high in calcium, and so if we lime it to begin with, and then our waterings all have this really high pH, high calcium water, it ends up throwing things off balance just because of the pH. So that's not the reason I'm going without. I would add a little bit. It's a good ingredient. I am saying though that you can count on a little bit of calcium coming just from the city water. If you're using city water, you know a little bit about it, and that can save you some heartache. But what I am doing for this video is showing you guys a great source of all of those things. So not only is this soil, which is just soil from the backyard, field soil, not only is this going to have some calcium and some magnesium, it's going to have some micronutrients as well. And so if you're growing in a soilless mix, you know, there's an industry standard called Micromax, but basically there's a lot of micronutrients out there. And they're all usually mineral related in their availability. So so Micromax is something valuable, but instead of Micromax, I'm just adding some field soil, which has not only a lot of the mineral components, but it also has, again, some worms and some fertility as far as just life, the bacterial, fungal, you know, life that might not be in the mix otherwise is now in the mix. So this is our nutrient added amendment that does not help at all with our internal drainage. So this just means going back to more of the organics for the ratio, or more vermiculite for the ratio, but it does help to make sure that we have nutrients available. So we'll mix it all up, and by look and feel, there's not really a lot you can tell unless you're working with it a lot. But this looks fine to grow in, and that's what I'm doing today. Alright guys, I hope you found something valuable in all that. I've got a tray here full of longevity spinach to pot on, and so I'm going to get to it. But give the video a like if you can. It lets me know I was heard and encourages me to make some more. And yeah, take care and hope you have a wonderful day.